We said last week 2024 is going to be a roller coaster ride. Unless the hand of the Lord intervenes and we find the most peaceful year in this nation's history, which he could. But if he doesn't, this thing's going to be a roller coaster ride. Now, we talked about last week how we are to go into the attitude we're to have as we go into 2024. And we talked about we need to go into 2024 as the ice fisherman goes out onto the ice to fish. They go out there confidently. They drive out there on their one-ton trucks. They drill holes in the ice. They light fires. They enjoy barbecues. They have a ball out there. We need to go into 2024 with the same attitude. We're to have a fearless confidence, a cheerful courage, a boldness, and an assurance to venture out into this new year, not because we have faith in God, but because of the God that we have faith in, that He is reliable, that He has shown Himself throughout biblical history over 6,000 years to be immovable, to be trustworthy, to be dependable, to be solid, and on Him and on His Son Jesus Christ, we can confidently go into this new year building our lives on Him, regardless of what comes our way. Our God is trustworthy, and He will not fear us, or He will not fail us, and will not give way, whatever comes our direction. Now, that's the attitude we're to have. Now, how do we make a difference is the question I'd like to think about today as we go into this new year. How do we make an impact on this world system that really has lost its mind, gone off the rails, has went into the darkness? How do we hold back the darkness that's trying to envelop this country and this whole world? How do we defeat the evil that we may face this coming year? Well, the religious people and some different courses folks might take in Bible college would say it's simple. We have to get our name out into the community. You see, we have to let the people around us know about our church. We have to get more people to come here. We have to grow in numbers. We have to get funds together and build a building, because that will attract more people. That will make us more significant in the community, is what we're told. We'll have more wealthy and influential people come our way. The important people in town will start to take notice because there's lots of people coming to our new building. And then we can collect more money into our treasury, and we could hire a youth minister, and we could grow a youth group. We could hire a family minister, and then a men's minister, and a woman's minister, and a music minister, a fellowship minister, and then we'll have to get a minister's minister to watch over all the ministers. That's what we have to do. And then at that point, we'll start another campus somewhere else. We'll be statewide, and then the politicians, the really important people, will start to take notice of us, because there'll be thousands of votes for them to get from the red water churches throughout the state of South Dakota. And from there, we'll go from the next state into the next state, and we'll get the state politicians worshiping with us, and we'll get involved in national politics. We'll start bankrolling candidates, and the end of this success, well, I'll be sitting in the White House praying with the new president by the end of the year. And we'll have really made an impact in this nation. Do you know that's man's idea of power? That's the blueprint that religious men will take and think this is how we get power. But it's not God's. It's not God's idea of power. It's not how God changes the world. It's not the plan that He has put out for us to make an impact and to drive back the darkness of this world. Listen to God's plan. Listen to God's strategy for defeating evil. Listen to God's way of rolling back the tide of darkness. Listen, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. These things I command you, that you love one another. Owe no one anything except to love one another. But concerning brotherly love, you have no need that I should write to you, for you yourselves are taught by God to love one another, since you have purified your souls in obeying the truth through the Spirit and sincere love of the brethren. Love one another fervently with a pure heart, for this is the message that you heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. And this is His commandment, that we should believe on the name of His Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another as He has commanded us. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has seen God at any time. If we love one another, God abides in us, and His love has been made perfect in us. And let's finish with John 13:34 through 35. A new commandment I give you, says Jesus, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this will all men know that you're my disciples, if you love one another. Does anyone see a pattern there? You see this kind of repeated theme? We went through, and I'll just give you a few, we went through the Gospel, some portions of the Gospel of John, Paul's letter to the Romans, Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, John's epistle, first epistle, second epistle of John, and we could have went on and on and on. How do we make a difference in 2024 according to God? How do we push back this darkness? It's not by getting more people, getting more money, getting more buildings, or getting more votes. It's by more love of God and greater love of Christ, and expanding love for one another, and the love of Christ expanding into the lives of our neighbors. Someone says, well, will that make any difference in 2024? It seems so weak, this love. Now, we're not talking about warm, cuddly, fuzzy, I feel good about you, you feel good about me, we all get together and have a big feel-good party about each other. That is not the love that we're talking about here. We're talking about putting the best interest of the person, be it our neighbor, be it our enemy, be it one another, at the forefront of our minds and our actions. This does not depend on how I feel about you or you feel about me. You might not feel good about me. I might not feel good about you, but I have to love you. Because that's what we're called to do, and that's what Christ did on the cross. But does it make a difference? I listened to an interview with a lady, a Chinese lady. Her name is Shi Fan Fleet. She grew up as a child 8 or 9 years old in China. She grew up under communism, or just as Mao's revolution in China was happening. She was put into a re-education camp. They took all the kids out of school. They put them into a communist school, and for 3 years she knew nothing but the teachings of Mao, Chairman Mao, and his little red book. At that point in time, Mao and the communist government, in their great wisdom, decided that they would take everybody off of the farms and everybody out of the fields, everybody who grew food, and put them to weapons production. Of course, 30 million people starved. 30 million, maybe more. They all starved, and this little girl was in the middle of it. She was at work camps, she was starving, and eventually, after the madness abated for a while, someone else took charge, and she could come to America. She went through the whole process of having to come here, and it was a whole trial. She wrote this in her book called Mao's America. If you're interested, I'm reading it at the moment. I would encourage you to have a look at it. Mao's America by Xi Fan Fleet. So she came to the United States, and she came here believing this was a land of opportunity, and then she went to college, she worked hard, she couldn't find jobs, they kept going at it, and she got married, and eventually, by the grace of God, she succeeded. But one thing she noticed, as she's lived here since the early 70s, she started to notice that the exact same pattern of cultural revolution was happening in this country. The same pattern that she saw going on in China is now been happening in America, and she couldn't believe it. Why would anybody want to go down the same path they went down under General or Chairman Mao? I listened to an interview with her the other day, and it was interesting what she said. She said this, and I'm paraphrasing. She said, Christianity is the only thing that holds back communism. It's the only thing that stops cultural revolution. And what she's talking about is what we're talking about today: not owning a church building, not having lots of people going there, not having the most important people in town coming to worship with you, not having this minister, that minister, the other minister. It's the loving one another that holds back the darkness of all world systems, including communism. It's the practice of the faith. It's the laying our lives down for one another that undermines critical race theory or diversity, equity, and inclusion, or cultural Marxism. Does it matter that we do this? Everything depends on God's plan. That we love one another. That we lay our lives down for one another. Because you can have the gift of prophecy, or you can understand all mysteries and have all knowledge. And you can, if you have enough faith to move mountains, and you don't have love, you've got nothing. You can give all your goods away to feed the poor. You can even lay your physical body down for your beliefs. But if you don't have love, you don't have anything. According to Paul in 1 Corinthians 13. See, I can have the buildings, and we can have the numbers and the budgets and the important people, but if we don't have love, we have nothing. And we've changed nothing. You can have all of those things, but you can still be in the darkness, and you will be overwhelmed by evil if you don't have love. It's loving one another that holds back the moral rot in society and loving one another as Christ has loved us that changes the world. But it's hard work. Listen, it's hard work. They value hard work in this community. Listen, loving one another is hard work. It doesn't happen by accident. It needs to be planned, it needs to be plotted, and it needs to be carried out. That's what we have to do. It's not easy. It's cross-shaped. But it's important for us to keep in mind that we're doing it. We're doing it. Even as we sit here today, we're doing it. I think it was Tuesday. I was in Spearfish. I just ran into a fella who we need to pray for. We need to pray for Dan. As Dan came up to the truck with his dog Onyx, such a sweet dog. He's ex-military, and it's one of those support dogs. I get a phone call, and it's Connie. And she's like, I'm by the side of the road. We just had a blowout on the van. And now I'm like, well, where are you on the road? Well, we find out she's, I don't know what road was that, Nathan? Yeah, but what's that, 34? Yeah. She's up there. Now I'm in Spearfish, trying to reach out to talk to Dan. She doesn't have a jack in the car. Probably my fault. But I had a jack in my car just in case I had a blowout. You just never know. So I'm like, well, just give me a minute. We can work this out. And so then I hear, well, hold on a minute. Sharon's calling. So Sharon I'm now getting a in-between conversation with Iona talking to Sharon. And I'm like, well, I'll call you back because I'm trying to talk to Dan. And I talked to him for a few minutes. I called him back, and Connie says, it's okay, we're good. Sharon and Nathan drove by, and they're coming to help. They saw us by the side of the road, and they've got a jack. And that's what this is about. That's the love of Christ for one another. We see each other in situations of need. We notice it. Because you guys were driving by and you noticed them by the side of the road. But then they had to stop or do a U-turn and go back. That took planning. Just seeing a need does not mean that you love. There had to be a turning around, there had to be going back, and then there had to be the hard labor of jacking up the van and taking off the wheel and doing whatever needed to be done. And you got help.
There was a signature that stopped as well. And he helped us get the tire off.
Nice.
The jack that I was for Sophia's Focus, which is smaller than the van.
Yes.
We got it all the way as tall as it could get, and the tire was still a little stuck. He was able to keep the tire.
Good. It was a team effort. We got it. They got it done. Connie, Iona, and everybody gets home safely, and I still got to talk to Dan. That is God's work. Together. That's the love of God. That changed the world that day. And that's what we're called to do as we go into this new year, to navigate through 2024 by loving one another. And we're doing it. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. But it's important to remember that we're doing it. Let me wrap this up for you. We're going into this new year. It is going to be difficult by the looks of it. We're thinking about how we make an impact and make a difference in 2024. And it's not by getting more people or getting more money or getting more votes for whoever, wherever. And there's nothing wrong with those things. But that's not how we change the world. We do it by loving one another. Someone says, well, how do you know it's going to work? Jesus took the 11 aside and said to them, here's the plan, boys. I want you to go into the world and love one another as I have loved you. Of course, they preached the gospel of his love, his giving himself on the cross. And then they taught the disciples who became Christians, they taught them that they should love one another. And they went and loved one another. And then the ones they told went and loved one another. And today there's multiple millions and billions on the earth loving one another. Does it work? We're here today. You and I are the hard evidence that this loving one another as Christ has loved us is how this world is changed, how we overcome evil, how we drive away the darkness. It's not complicated. It's cross-shaped. It's that we love one another.